Good evening, everybody. Busy day today, lots of stuff going on. Sorry, I'm just getting to this. But here's today's question period, and we're going to do a Maxime Bernier Twitter roundup because it's been a couple of days since I've done one, and it's time. I need to do that. Yesterday in the House of Commons, Justin Trudeau said, low-income Canadians do not pay taxes. And he was lambasted by myself and pretty much everybody else for saying something that is patently false. Everybody in Canada pays taxes, regardless of the exemptions. We pay taxes on bills. We pay taxes on taxes. We pay HST on carbon tax. We will be paying HST on carbon tax, or you will be if you don't already, right? Thanks, Justin Trudeau. So I think it's interesting when the leader of the opposition, Andrew Scheer, and that's who we're looking at here, asks a question and Justin Trudeau misunderstands it or just outright refuses to answer it or invokes Stephen Harper. That's what he does in this answer. We'll listen to the question and some of the answer, but Justin Trudeau literally spends the next 5 minutes talking and not answering the question. It's frustrating to watch. I don't know how anybody could vote for this person. He is absolutely a waste of space to have in the House of Commons. Okay, here's the leader of the opposition, Andrew Scheer. Go.
Matter is, yesterday in this House, the Prime Minister said that low-income Canadians do not benefit from tax breaks because they do not pay taxes. That is his quote. So can the Prime Minister tell Canadians, does he truly believe that low-income Canadians pay no GST, pay no EI payroll taxes, pay no federal taxes, or pay no gas taxes?
Prime Minister. For 10 years under Stephen Harper, the Conservatives put forward an economic plan that gives advantages and benefits to the wealthiest 1% while neglecting to help low-income Canadians who actually need that help.
So, and he spends 5 minutes pulling this spin. The question was, do you really believe that low-income Canadians don't pay taxes such as GST? And he gave more examples, and Trudeau decides to lambaste the Stephen Harper Conservatives. So that's how out of touch these people are, right? That's how out of touch he is. He's still talking about Stephen Harper. That was 2015, Mr. Trudeau, and you've got lots of failures to hang around your neck. Unfortunately for Canada. Goodness. So this is the Maxime Bernier Twitter roundup aspect. The LibCon aspect of this charge of Maxime Bernier saying constantly the Liberals and Conservatives are two sides of the same coin, I almost take it for granted. I almost didn't cover this story, this specific tweet, because I think it's pretty universally well known. But at the same time, I was reading the article and I thought, people don't necessarily understand that on the really big stuff, in the broad strokes, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party are very aligned. And those aren't my words. And not Maxime Bernier's words either. That's the Globe and Mail. This is the Globe and Mail article linked in this tweet. So Maxime Bernier says, quote, LibCons, Ibbotson, Liberals and Conservatives worldview so close that election isn't worth hacking. So this is a tongue-in-cheek article saying that basically Russia, China, all of the other major parties in the world, there's no difference between the Conservatives and the Liberals, so they wouldn't bother hacking it because it wouldn't really mean anything to them. Having the LPC or the CPC, their positions are basically the same. So here's the article. Quote, the Liberals in particular would rather you think there was a great gulf between them and the Conservatives in foreign policy. After all, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised big changes. A Canada is back re-engagement with the world after a decade of Stephen Harper's brutish approach. The record, however, has proved to be the opposite. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland reinforced Mr. Harper's determination to isolate Russia and keep it isolated. The Liberals doubled down on support for Ukraine and sent a battle group to Latvia to help protect NATO borders with strong Conservative support. Then there is the China file. While Mr. Harper was always suspicious of the regime in Beijing, Mr. Trudeau envisioned a warmer relationship, but hopes for trade talks were wrecked by the Liberals' insistence on putting human rights on the agenda. And then came the detention for extradition of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou at the request of the United States. Although Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has criticized Mr. Trudeau's handling of the Huawei controversy, a Conservative government would maintain the Liberal position of honoring the extradition treaty between Canada and the United States, while leaving the rest to the courts. In sum, neither Beijing nor Moscow has any reason to hope that conspiring to undermine the Liberals would lead to improved relations under a conservative government. I scroll down a little bit. This is talking about the United States. It says, Mr. Scheer, of course, insists that he would have struck a better deal for Canada at the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Accord, or the USMCA, but he wouldn't have. From Barack Obama to Donald Trump, and from Stephen Harper to Justin Trudeau, Canada's U.S. relations have followed broadly the same path, protecting Canadian interests, especially on trade, while working to preserve the Western alliance. I scroll down to almost the end. He makes a lot of other good points on what their broad policies, or where their broad policies are aligned, but I'm just jumping down to here. As for Saudi Arabia, both parties agree that protecting the sale of armored vehicles to the regime is the first priority, whatever else happens on the human rights front. But Canada is blessed by having two major parties with virtually identical views. Just don't tell the Liberals. It drives them nuts. And I thought that was kind of funny. And true. So there are a lot of... One of my biggest criticisms of Mr. Scheer back in the summer, before Maxime Bernier split, was that he was drumming the same beat as Trudeau against Trump. He was saying exactly the same stuff. He was even saying that Trump is anti-free trade, and Trump's behavior is anything but anti-free trade. And I've got a whole montage of Scheer accusing Trump of being anti-free trade, and then Trump saying right after the G7 in 2018, I proposed 100% free trade between Canada and the United States, and no dumping, and he specifically talks about that. So I find it really interesting that it is 9 months before the election, and we're seeing opinion pieces in major conservative, and I mean, Globe and Mail conservative. I guess the opinion's up to you. I always thought it was a conservative paper. We're seeing they're basically the same. So that's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. Okay, here is a PPC by-election I wanted to show you 30 seconds of, because I think, number one, it's interesting to note what debates are happening in by-elections these days, and two, I don't think this specific debate would have happened without Bernier. I don't think these talking points would have gotten out without Bernier. Okay, I'm going to get it queued up and we'll get going in a second. Okay, so this is Robert Gertzlaw, yep, and he is the PPC candidate for York Simcoe.
About corporate welfare. That's $5 billion savings. And what none of these others have said is that something has to give. So we have to be able to make the hard choices, and the hard choices is we have to say no to maybe our foreign commitment within the United Nations. That institution has failed us on multiple levels, and we can't continue to fund and carry the whole world. We need a timeout.
And I'll pause it there. Link is in the description if you're interested in watching the whole thing. I think there's some hits and some misses in this 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but I wanted to show you that because, well, I agree fundamentally with that. And I don't think that conversation happens on a debate stage in Canada without Bernier. So that's interesting. The rest of these are just Maxime Bernier tweets, so here we go. This is from February 4th, 5:30 in the morning. Liberal arrogance and virtue signaling on the world stage has alienated all major powers. And this is Marin reporting. A little more modesty and diplomacy would have got us much further than lecturing and wagging our finger as if we've got a sense of superiority. And that's a Toronto Sun column. Link is in the description. Well, link to the tweet is in the description. This is a tweet from February 4th as well, and it's in response to one of Maxime Bernier's own tweets. He says, quote, "This tweet got over 6,500 likes. Many people are fed up with political correctness and diversity nonsense. I'm the only politician in Ottawa who dares attacking it. If you agree and are not a member of the PPC yet, please join." And he's got a link. And the tweet itself that he's referencing is one from the other day. And it says, "Leftist logic. You can't wear a Chinese dress at prom. You can't wear an Aboriginal costume at Halloween. You can't wear dreadlocks if you're white, and you can't teach yoga if you're not Indian. That's all cultural appropriation. Appropriation, not appreciation, as I got wrong last time. And but you can and should try a hijab on World Hijab Day. That's diversity," says the CBC. And so he's using his own bully pulpit to prove, yeah, there's an audience for this. And yes, there is. Yes, there absolutely is. Hypocrisy is on full display by our purchased media. So this is a quick aside, $600 million over 5 years. That's $10 million a month. That's a lot. Maxime Bernier is tweeting again. February 6th, He says, quote, "Our current tax code baffles even the people responsible for enforcing it. In a recent study, the Auditor General of Canada found the CRA's call center gave the wrong information to callers nearly 1/3 of the time to clean up this fiscal mess." And there's a link to a Globe and Mail article talking about how convoluted and ridiculous our tax program is. Under Maxime Bernier, up to $15,000 is not taxed federally. $15,000 to $100,000 is taxed at 15%, I believe, and anything above $100,000 is taxed at 25%. Now, I could have those numbers off. It could be 10 and 15, but I am not going to check right now because I've tried to do this video 4 times today and it just hasn't worked, and I'm just going to keep going. Sorry, we'll check later. So here is another tax tweet, and it was later on in the day today. It was 10:46 a.m. on February 6th, so maybe not that much later on. And it said, "This evening, I will vote against a Conservative motion asking for Ottawa to hand over federal tax collection in Quebec to the provincial government. Scheer says it will simplify things for Quebecers, who are the only Canadians filing 2 tax returns. The opposite will happen." And this is the second tweet. "In the other 9 provinces, the tax base is harmonized and Ottawa collects taxes. Everything will be more complicated if Quebec does the opposite. This is just another irresponsible CPC promise to buy votes in Quebec with support from the Bloc, even if it's not in Canada's interest." And I did ask, what will you do instead? And I realized that I answered my own question when I answered it here. It's a simplified tax for all of Canada, and I think that Quebec would be included in the simplified tax. But I could be wrong. So question stands. I'm still waiting to hear what the plan is, but I think that that's the plan. I think that a simplified tax for all of Canada rather than a convoluted system of specialized boutique taxes that Bernier rails against, corporate and otherwise. Here's Maxime Bernier doing a speech talking about corporate welfare was the word I was looking for, and talking about the regional agencies that put it into the provincial, into coffers, right? So rather than having a maritime person administering the Alberta coffers or whatever, he's going to get rid of all of those agencies and save $5 billion. So you can listen to that whole speech here. Link is in the description. Sorry that we're not listening to it right now. And finally, I found this one interesting. Former ISIS sex slaves sheltered in Canada threatened by phone calls and texts. And this is a terrible thing. It says 5 women and 1 14-year-old girl filed reports with York Regional Police. The victims are all Yazidis who survived an ISIS-led genocide in Iraq in 2014. They have handed over to police recordings of the phone calls and screen grabs of the text, which reference the Islamic State, including pictures of beheadings and armed jihadis. W5 has listened to the phone calls. In one, a man laughs and says in Arabic, "I'm the man who effed you. I'm your rapist." A second one denounces Yazidis as devil worshippers, and a third caller makes a graphic reference to rape. This is happening in Canada, right? Like, this is incredible, and it's just kind of sad. So thank you for watching, everybody. Sorry that I didn't get my usual 2 videos out today. Things were busy. Snow days and all sorts of other stuff happening. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful evening.